Good day, YouTube family. Thank you for returning. Thank you for viewing and listening to what I have to say about cycles of resistance to Black economic development. What do we really mean by that? Well, we're going to break that down because it really entails fear of a Black planet. Someone fearing that. We're talking about when we have Black progress. Why is it that we seem to have a backtrack? Like we take one step forward, two steps backwards. What's going on? Well, your eyes are wide shut when you're not paying attention to things that have actually happened in history. So allow me to help you see what you have difficulty seeing. So change is coming and it will be on a grand scale. So we're going to kind of look at this really from a perspective of these little things that are happening within our environment. In reality, there's a bigger element that may be happening that will change the whole way we see the world. So you either fear it or you embrace it. So I'm going to try to get you to see that there's cycles of social upheaval that have distracted us from our human mission on this planet. We should not be at war with one another. We should not be killing one another. We should be living in harmony with one another. So in that context, when we're not, the universe speaks out. And so there are things on a grand scale that we're not paying attention to. Some are, and then when they are, they're actually manipulating it. And then you don't know what's happening. Let me break this down for you. What do these random melanin dominant men have in common? Patrice Lumumba, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., Ken Bridges, Aaron Salter. Look at the time frame, 61, 65, 68, 2002, 2022. What do these random, they have no connection to one another. Malcolm may have met or did meet Martin. Malcolm met Lumumba. The other characters did not know one another, so they're random. So the reality is they've all been assassinated because of economic agendas. I have a question mark there because the latter two that I will explain to you, certainly a question mark. But Patrice Lumumba was the people's elected leader of the Congo out of independence when African countries were gaining independence. Here in the United States, we had the Black Power movement. But there in the Congo, he was the people's elected leader, wanting to change the policies so that the resources were used for the people. That exploitation, like it was during the colonial empire when Belgium was there exploiting the resources, taking it back to Europe. Well, he was a threat. Unfortunately, the United States government, when I say unfortunately for us, it's unfortunate, but the United States government, the Central Intelligence Agency had him assassinated. He met with Nkrumah. So in the same time period, he had Frantz Fanon around. They were talking about like a United States of Africa. African people controlling their own resources, which the European Empire right now needs for a lot of their technology. So Lumumba was a threat. We know about Malcolm X more so than you may know about Lumumba. But Malcolm X came back from Africa on his visits after being removed and released from the Nation of Islam to start the Organization of African American Unity. Again, Black economic development. Know about Martin Luther King? He was organizing the poor people's march. He became a threat when he started to organize the poor people and talk about a radical redistribution of the wealth of the United States. So he was a threat, so he had to be assassinated. You have now Reverend Barber out of North Carolina that's pushing this message of a poor people's campaign. May he not be assassinated. May we protect him. On the bottom there, it says Mata behind this brother named Ken Bridges. This is a story that you probably have not heard of, but back in 93 or back in the 90s when they had this DC sniper, and you can watch a little video on that DC Sniper, 23 Days of Fear. They actually did a movie about it in 2003. But Ken Bridges, man, this brother was profound. His mission was to encourage African Americans to spend their money on products made by Black-owned companies. And his economic development blueprint was part of a larger philosophy. He talked about internal reparations. Yeah, external reparations would be nice if the United States or whoever it is that exploited African people as prisoners gave them what they need to restore what was taken from them, but that has not happened. So internal reparations, what we can work on. So he was the executive vice president for Mata Network. I don't know if you ever heard of Mata, but you do your own research. I had my old, one of the products that I had from Mata. I still got it on my shelf. Old school. But he was talking about having a company devoted to improving African American owned businesses. He lived in Philly and just happened to be the 10th victim shot at a gas station in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Just seems strange for that to happen like that. That's why I say questionable assassination. And then we have the brother Aaron Salter there in Buffalo as the security guard. But what we know about Aaron Salter? Aaron Salter, let's see. I'll come back to him. Let me come back to Aaron Salter. But this issue of black economic development, Salter had a device or mechanism to use water for fuel. That saves a whole lot of money on not using gas. So this fear of black people organizing and getting together, does it like start out of nowhere? No, it does not start out of nowhere, but we can start to look at time frames of where you have European or melanin recessive people wanting to control melanin dominant environments. So can you believe that there was a white supremacist overthrow of a government? Not what we know about 2021 under President this guy, number 45. But what we're talking about is that this happened a while ago. Listen to this.
For a long time, if you went to the library in Wilmington, North Carolina, there was one thing you weren't allowed to research.
We were refused. We were rejected by the librarian.
When I asked about or inquired about 1898, they wanted to know why.
I was told that, yes, they had something, but they kept it under lock and key.
The story of Wilmington in 1898 still isn't widely known.
What happened here on what's now just this empty patch of grass would radically change racial politics in North Carolina.
This is the story of an American election, but also of something we don't usually find in American history: the violent overthrow of a democratically elected government.
So, from 1898, when this happened in Wilmington, we fast forward to 123 years later, still a joke on prosecution if we don't have any executions or people imprisoned for what they did to raid the Capitol on January 6, 2021. Now, it's a joke because if those were black people that did that, or non-white people that did that, they would have been massacred. But that didn't happen. So again, we call it a joke because those people aren't properly prosecuted who did this in the past. If you think about Denmark Vesey, Gabriel Prosser, Nat Turner, people who were fighting for their freedom and they were executed for fighting for their freedom. Hey, in the past, heads were cut off. We don't do that anymore. But a set example, well, you wouldn't do that again. So, fear of a black planet, timeline, follow the potential loss of money. And how hegemony means when someone's trying to control and dictate how you operate, you see the world from their perspective and not yours. So the potential loss of money to melanin recessive hegemony, that is Europeans or white people trying to control. This 1898 massacre, we see that white people's successful overthrow of a local government. 1921, we just had a 100-year anniversary of this massacre, and there have been no reparations since dealing with that. That's 1921. So we now look at 1961, 65, 68. Those are the target assassinations that we already said of Lumumba, Malcolm, and Martin Luther King. And then I said the target assassinations that seemed to be random, but they were 20 years apart. Ken Bridges and Aaron Salter. 20 years apart. One 2002, the other 2022. And then we have this insurrection. I would say permitted insurrection that happened with white people's unsuccessful attempt to overthrow the U.S. government in 2021. But that's a timeline of things happening. And while all this is going on, there are bigger elements happening in the world where we're now in a recession for some and a depression for others. So if we had the opportunity to have our own money, we'd probably be more protected. So we've had 100 years of white fears. So Wilmington to Tulsa is like a 23-year span. And when we came out of Reconstruction, we had a lot of people that were involved in politics, had our own communities, were doing very well. And then you have this black codes and then the whole Jim Crow era that kind of dismantled black progress. Just talked about that, but the Wilmington to Washington, D.C. span is 123 years. And then the major black assassinations, it's just interesting to look at these numbers. From 61 to 2022, those 5 names that I just gave you, I looked at assassinations, 34-year span of time. In the 60s, 61 to 65, that's 4 years. 65 to 68, so during that time period, you had these assassinations of our major political figures. So 34-year span, and then you got 4 years and 3 years. Those numbers keep lining up, 34. And then the random, I say kill shots, if you don't want to say assassinations, but kill shots of Ken Bridges and Aaron Salter. That's a 20-year span of those elements happening. Again, so Ken Bridges was you can go ahead and look up his name, look up Mata Organization, how he was trying to create an organization where we had serious black economic development to change the economy. And again, dealing with internal reparations, changing our minds first rather than waiting on external reparations. And then Aaron Salter, the brother who was shot in that tragic event in Buffalo, New York, he had a water-powered engine system that could change the economy. He received no funding support. You go ahead on YouTube and see his ideas that he was trying to profess and get out to use water and no fuel. Got no support. Interestingly, in this same year, 2022, there's a movie or a documentary series. A series on Netflix called The Man Who Fell to Earth, starring Chiwetel Ejiofor and Naomi Harris. Interesting dynamic, because again, it's talking about looking up out of the cosmos rather than just on the earth here where we are. But there's bigger things that are out there. But the story is told that he's coming here to the earth to find some resources for this new technology of fusion. And the fusion technology can power up energy sources without using gas and using the oil. And so that would change the whole economy. Again, that's dangerous because those that are making money from the oil and the gas, they wouldn't want to see that dismissed. And that's why we have this whole global climate crisis right now and real life issues. But in the movies, the discussion about someone coming from above, and just happened to be black characters for this particular series. The brother, Chiwetel Ejiofor, is playing the character coming from above. He has to transition to be a human, and he's learning what it means to be human. So it's kind of like a spiritual technology series. You can watch it if you like to, but just sharing that with you because, again, it's about looking up. And in the same time period, 2021, there was a Netflix documentary movie called Don't Look Up. It's about an asteroid coming to hit the Earth and people not believing it. Jennifer Lawrence, Leo DiCaprio was their star in that. And then you have this new movie coming out actually this week called Nope. And Jordan Peele has been at the forefront of creating some very interesting thrillers. And this one, again, is about something coming, something looking up. And the point I'm making is that when Hollywood is telling you these things, showing you these things about whatever they want you to know, guess what? Something's coming. All those movies about contagion, outbreak, and then we have this pandemic, this current pandemic. The movies are telling you what's coming. So, interestingly, In science, there's now uh, actually a satellite out there, this NASA OSIRIS-Rex mission to collect samples from an asteroid called Bennu. So they got a satellite system called OSIRIS-Rex, OSIRIS-Rex. However you want to look at it, these are African terms. Osiris and Bennu are African terms. So they want to put this satellite on the asteroid and to kind of extract some of the elements that are there. But look at this, Osiris. Who is Osiris? So this is blackness in the extraterrestrial world. Osiris is actually the Greek name for Osir. Osir is an African name, so Osiris is Greek. One of the most popular male deities in Kemet. Kemet, where African people are. So African people created this. Bennu, Bennu, the phoenix-like bird of ancient Kemet mythology. Bennu was depicted as a heron, like a bird, and the creature originally sprang out of the heart of Osiris. The name translates as to rise in brilliance. So the reality is, people are looking at your history and you don't know your own history. When you start looking up, you start thinking beyond the crazy world we're living in now, where people don't and can't relate to one another, killing one another for senseless acts. We start to look at reality is there something else going on up there? I got this book called Blacks, A Race from Beyond the Stars by Paul Duncan. I have the book, but you can't go on the internet and find that book anywhere. I wonder why. So I'm trying to get you to understand, you must be able to look beyond the confines of the world you are walking in right now. So your eyes are wide shut because all this is happening right in front of you. Open them because what is going on or what is going to come is going to blow your mind. So be ready. And reality is a bigger problem in the world we were dealing with. And in a few years, you'll see it. I think that people like Melanin Dominant people are the problem. When they say that we're the problem, we're not the problem. Because everybody's going to be taken out. We're all going to be like dinosaurs if we don't really collectively work together to support one another. So this fear of a black planet is real, but it is a distraction for what is to come. So by targeting black communities and not helping out the poor, not giving advantages to the disadvantaged, and always trying to take and exploit, that's when we must start to study why that is happening so we can get out of that situation. So now let me share, as I usually do, some books so we can conclude this short presentation on why I want you to start looking up more, paying attention to your surroundings so you can be more connected to nature. So let me go ahead and break down some books for you. So, of course, there's many books that we can be looking at, but this is one called Dark Money by Jane Mayer. Interesting book because it really talks about the hidden history of the billionaires behind the rise of the radical right. I get surprised today how some people don't know what the Tea Party is, and they don't know about the influence of the Koch brothers and the money that has been put into politicians, Congress, Supreme Court, and decisions that are made, and how that dark money really has an impact on why it is that we don't see progress in society. It creates a situation where it's a us versus them. So this is a book called The Failure of Globalism by Ian Bremmer. And the premise is essentially when humans feel threatened, as we just talked about in this short documentary or this short presentation, when human beings feel threatened, we look for allies. We use the enemy, real or imagined, to rally friends to our side. This book is about the ways in which people will define these threats as fights for survival. It's about the walls of governments will build to protect insiders from outsiders and the state from its people. And it's about what we can do about it. That's why I'm saying we got to read and study so we have a way to kind of break this monotony that the oppressor has on our mind. You don't understand how it's been done, you continually get exploited. That's why Randall Robinson wrote a book called The Debt, What America Owes to Blacks. And pretty profound brother. I mean, he's created Trans Africa. We talked about him before, I believe, in another session, but he talks about a conversation he had with brother Maynard Jackson about what could be done to kind of organize things. Look at this. It says, Maynard Jackson, when he was mayor of Atlanta, told me once that all African Americans should carry on their persons a laminated card listing the policies that would benefit our community. Whenever approached for support by a local, state, or national politician, the bearer would whip out the card and read it aloud to the candidate for office. The race of the candidate would not matter. All would have to face the card. After all, this was business. So basically, how do we keep organizing ways that we stay connected in the way that the system's constructed, the media disconnects us? Like we have no connection, and that's done purposefully. Remember talking about the little video? Wilmington's lie, the murderous coup, again, overthrew the government by David Zucchino. So this happened in 1898, and we just saw what happened in 2021. Nobody was prosecuted for this. And again, it's highly unlikely that the powers that be will be prosecuted for what happened in 2021. So what are they fearing? The global African presence. Of course, there's other nationalities and other cultural groups and other people out there in the world, but for some reason, blacks seem to be so fearful and dangerous. So look at this by Edward Scobie. The global African presence. African people all over the world. You see places like Colombia right now. Colombia. They got a change. They got a leftist president and they got a black woman that was voted in as the vice president. So that's one area of the world where change is happening. But you know, the United States is manipulating a lot of the elections and governmental structures of other places, but we have to be aware that other people are making changes. Here in the United States, he's passed now, but Stetson Kennedy, if you ever find his books, The Jim Crow Guide, The Way It Was, it really breaks down how we were living back then and why it's really has not improved to the point that people don't want black people to have anything. So the Jim Crow Guide, in my opinion, was very resourceful to understand what happened, but he also wrote a book called After Appomattox, How the South Won the War. We know about all those stories. We saw about the statues being taken down. We saw the issues with Confederacy and all the statements about this new right that's coming along. But he is a scholar. Excellent resources on kind of defining what happened. The whole Southern strategy, which the white politicians used to make sure that they stayed in power, and what's going on in some of these governments. It's really a situation that if you're not aware of it, you're going to be politically assassinated. When I say politically assassinated, it means taken out because you have no power. And that's why this redistricting and redlining and all that happens. So in sum, the power of your idea can live on forever. The weakest and puniest person on the planet can be powerful in their idea if their idea is promoted, controlled, and manufactured. When you put military-style influence behind the idea, you have a world upside down in which the weakest are in control. There may seem to be real power by those in control, but they are weak without the resources, weak without the masses being controlled, and weak without being able to control currents, that is the flow of money. So actually, the rich are those with talents to survive in harmony with nature. The rich are those who can live in harmony with other people. The rich are those who can see the value in the collective nature of what it means to be a human and a person, not a thing. The so-called rich are artificial, and they need things to be somebody. They fear the naturally rich. We must flip the script and make manifest the Alpha and the Omega. So if we keep looking up, or if we see the massive change that is coming, it will create a situation where we can now look for a new beginning. Because again, I won't say hell's about to be broken loose, but if you don't pay attention that something could actually hit the earth, cause a massive change, you got your head buried in the sand and the rest of your body will be taken out. So the point is, you can be distracted and manipulated. You can also have on blinders like a horse and never know really what's going on around you. So, yes, people have fought back and have been killed for fighting back. but it is a well-organized collective unit that can conquer all evil. So a nuclear threat or the crash of an asteroid will cancel all these things we're saying about racial politics. You should be living yourself with this imminent threat of nuclear war, especially with this Ukrainian, Russian dynamic and all these other empires getting involved. In one push of a button, people are gone. So we have to look at ways that we can live without fear, but embrace what is to come. So that's not going to come unless we work together and understand why those have been working so hard to keep you disunited. So again, let's focus on ways that we can find ways to bring people together, but by dealing with truth and reality. So again, thank you for attending another session, and we shall be black. Thank you.